the end of the day, I really think having a system of people around you who really get the heart of who you are and who can meet you where you are is very, very important.
Welcome to the Passion Behind the Art Show. It's all about diving in with individuals to learn the story behind their passion. It's your host, Daryl Payne.
Well, I am excited to have Nikki Washington on the Passion Behind the Art Show. Just a leader of women, and she has a great podcast. I love the name. Let me find out. Nikki, welcome.
Thank you so much for having me there. I really appreciate it.
Oh, for sure, for sure. It took us a little while to make this happen, but nothing before the time. Nothing before the time.
Thank you for your graciousness and your patience, my brother.
Yes. All right, Nikki. So let's jump right into it. How did this creative slash leader slash project manager journey start?
Yeah, well, all of them started at different times, really. So for me, the creative side really came from a place it's kind of always been innate to who I am. I've always dealt in the arts or some kind of creative outlet. When I started ministry, I did worship leading. I was over our singles ministry. We did all kinds of creative stuff with youth. If you've ever worked with youth, you know you have to be some kind of creative to be a youth leader in any capacity. So I did all of that. But really just delving into what was natural to me. So I started writing when maybe I was, I want to say maybe 11 or 12. And I just loved to storytell. I just loved to write. And when I was a teenager, my mom bought me a little something to type on. And I remember spending all day Christmas, like literally cranking out like fictional stories, like, and I just thought it was just like the funnest thing in the world. Like, what kid likes to write and read at 12 or 11, unless you're a little weird. So I'm a little weird, self-professed weird. And I just loved doing it. And so over the course of time, God opened up some doors. I launched a magazine. It did very well. I got to interview a lot of wonderful people you know, people you might not know. And so I got to write doing that. And then I started doing books, and I always joke about if God can use anybody to do books, I'm living proof that he can use anybody to do books, because it was just not something I thought I would ever do. So using my creative outlet in that way, and just really honestly following the voice of God everywhere I went. I don't think that I, in hindsight, would have thought that my trajectory would have looked like this, but I'm so glad it has, because I never imagined I'd be in some of the spaces that God has allowed me to grace. So I'm pretty blessed.
That's amazing, especially when it comes to the writing side, because I am not a writer by any stretch. You know what I mean? You give me something, you say, Daryl, design it, I will design the heck out of it. But writing is not my strength, but it's something I'm very fascinated with, because it affects what I do a lot.
Sure. I feel the same way about designers too.
Right, exactly. It kind of works hand in hand. It works very much hand in hand. So how are some ways, I feel like you have a natural ability to write, but how were some of the ways you got better? What's some of the tips or something you could share on getting better at writing?
So when it came to writing, what I realized the importance to have pauses. So a lot of times as creators, we just have so much in us. We want to just crank it out. I just want everybody to get in. You just kind of verbally go all over the paper or go all over your script or whatever the case may be. But I have learned that it gets better when I take pause and walk away from it and come back to it. So as a creative, I think sometimes we don't give ourselves room to have crappy moments, because we expect everything. I have people, friends who are musicians or friends who are creatives as far as painting, and they expect everything they do to be the next Picasso, or everything is a next top 10 Billboard hit, or everything you write is a New York Times bestseller. But the reality of it is, most people will tell you they got some crappy stuff in the arsenal. You got a jump drive that got some crappy writing that you don't ever see the light of day. So for me, one of the things that helped me as a writer is really taking creative pause and being okay with the writer's block, and knowing that when you kind of take pause from it, not only does it give you room to get your juices flowing again, but when you come back to it, you can better assess, because you have some kind of separation between you and it, how well of a writer you really are, what you put on paper, and what it really contributes to the whole writing zeitgeist. Is it really something that's good, or were you just in your bag? You really have to give yourself pause. And then also, I would say, having people around you that really understand the creative side of you, that can really sharpen you, and you can bounce ideas off. So I'm sure you have some people that you present something to
Right.
who do what you do and you value their opinion. So like, what do you think of this? And they'll be like, oh, that was really awesome. And of course it's subjective, but then there are some people like, man, that was kind of trash. So you
You
need
need those
you
people
need
though. I need
someone,
those
yeah,
people like be straight up like
you
this. Nah, this ain't
really
working.
do. Keep it 100. Like, don't give me the fluff, because the thing is, you don't get better until you really have some people to sharpen it against. And then also, I believe in utilizing tools. And
Mm,
that's something that I think people who are naturally gifted don't always lean into. So
right.
I have friends who are singers that can just sing up one side and down the other. But there are some disciplines that will make you better at singing. There
Right.
are some disciplines, whether it's taking vocal lessons, whether it's studying the grades, whether it's really learning how your diaphragm works. There are some things that you can do to add to that natural ability. And like it is the same with writing. So for me, I'm very creative. I went all throughout college, literally, I could do a 10-page paper hours before it was due and I would get a good grade on it. But there was still some stuff I had to hone, like, hey, that comma don't go there, that comma goes here.
Right.
Or hey, you need, a semicolon, or hey, this conjunction is not working. So literally I had to learn, and I'm still learning how to fine tune the little things, because when you're creative, sometimes you just love the art so much that you're not really paying attention to the technicalities of it all.
That's amazing. It's always good to kind of hear that type of stuff. And yes, we as creatives, we have some kind of perfectionist issue. Like we have an issue with having everything
we
down
really,
to the T.
we really do.
We'll
You ain't
spend
lying.
hours on one little small thing instead of just kind of moving forward.
Absolutely.
That's true. That's true. So, what are some of the like the writing ventures that you've been a part of? I know you said the magazine. What are some of the? Is the magazine still going? What are some of the ventures that?
No, so we closed the doors to the magazine maybe in 2000. I want to say 2012, something like that.
Okay.
So we did it for about 6.5 years, and I closed it just because, one, I had to realize that when you launch vision, it doesn't mean that vision has to go on forever. Sometimes it
Facts.
fulfills its mission, which is something, especially with entrepreneurs, that you think as an L. You take it as an L, like, oh man, if it doesn't go on for 100 years, like a PepsiCo or like a Microsoft, then
Right.
it was a failure. But sometimes it's just for that specific niche, and it evolves. So for
Facts.
me, even though the magazine closed, it continued to evolve in the form of doing radio shows,
Mm-hmm.
in the form of doing podcasts, in the form of public speaking, doing platform speaking. So I think it kind of evolves. But for a long time, the magazine was really it was really, really healthy in that it was able to go out to these different spaces and really bless people and provide platforms for people who wouldn't have them otherwise. So
Nice.
there might be a Daryl who, like, had a platform and it was great, but he didn't have the same platform as a Bishop Jakes or
Right.
as
Right. Right.
a Bill Gates, and he needed some space.
Mm-hmm.
So our little niche was able to launch a lot of careers. So I was grateful for that. But after all that was said and done, I really decided that I wanted to have a space where I could talk to everyday people like me,
Mm.
and creatives like me, and really just have a space where it could be safe, and you didn't have to be super polished if you didn't want to be, and you didn't have to be super buttoned up if you didn't want to be, but you could still be professional and really just kind of speak to the everyday issues of people.
Mm.
So in a real way, that's something that I try to provide in my podcast. I don't know if I answered your question, but that's
Yeah.
something
Yeah.
that I
Yeah.
really
Yeah. Yeah.
have tried to provide with the podcast, really making sure that we create a space that allows creatives, that allows ministry leaders, that allows the everyday person to see the intersect between church and home and everyday life. Because a lot of times, I don't know what your demographic is, your age group, but my generation growing up, we didn't have a space that talked to us about how to live outside the church
Facts.
and what life looks like
Facts.
after you leave the church. So you just kind of shouted happy. And if you were having problems at home, you didn't talk about it because they didn't talk about it at
Mm-hmm.
church. So to have that lived out in a practical way, and to be like, hey, it's okay to feel how you feel, as long as we point to God after all of that, I think it was important to fill that white space. And so in whole, no matter what my vehicle has been, the mission has been the same. It's to really bridge the gap between the church and home life.
I love that. I love that because a lot of times, like, if you have, especially as people of faith, like you see all these people, you go to church and these people seem like superhumans, and when you go
Hmm.
home and you go back home and you have your issues and whatever, you're wondering, you're comparing, and you're like, man, like, how do I get to that person? I got all these issues here, not knowing
Hmm.
that all these people that we see, these leaders or whatever, they got their issues too, just like all the rest of us. Like it's and it's just but you're right, a lot of times it's not discussed. It's more
No.
portrayed of like this perfect life, this perfect way
Yeah,
of being a Christian. And if you're not doing these various things, like you're falling short, and it's actually not
absolutely.
really realistic.
Absolutely. I'm glad you said that because I don't think it's said enough. But you're absolutely right. I think the important thing to note in all that we do is that we're not condoning a behavior, we're not condoning a lifestyle, but we're saying, you know what, God be praised in spite of the fact that you're wrestling with whatever you're wrestling
Right.
with, which is something that you haven't heard a whole lot. So you don't wallow in the state that you're in, but you're saying, you know what, I acknowledge the state that I am, and I'm pressing toward this mark.
Mm-hmm.
And you can do both and still love God, as opposed to, you know what, if you're not here, you're going to hell. That's not necessarily the case. We are striving, ever growing, ever pursuing the purpose and the will and the perfection of holiness.
I love it. I love it. So why the name? Where did this name come from? Like, I mean, it just seems like when I looked it up, I was like, this name seems like nobody has this name. Like, it just seemed like something that would have
That's
been
funny.
taken already.
You know, you would think so, but it really came from, I don't know about your circle, but a lot of times, especially with women in our circle, when we say something, it could be a compliment, it could be a warning, it could be a joke. So it could be a compliment like, oh, look at you with your clothes on. Girl, let me find out you be dressing. Or it could be something like, in a relationship, oh, that's how you feel. Let me find out something. Da, da, da. So it really could be translated to so many different things, but the feel of it really is just about curiosity and encouraging people to be curious and encouraging people to ask questions in and outside of the church. Because again, a lot of us grew up in a space where you weren't supposed to question God. You
Mm-hmm.
weren't supposed to question your parents. You were just supposed to sit there and just kind of ingest. But I believe God wants us to dialogue with him. He wants us to have fellowship. He
Mm-hmm.
called us to have sonship. So I think it's important for us to question, and not question from a place of challenging necessarily, but you're questioning from a place of understanding. So let me find out is really just, hey, let me find out this is what I think it is, or let me find out this is really that bomb. So that's really where the title came from, curiosity.
Okay, so I mean, you go from writing, and so where did the epiphany for a podcast come from? Like,
Well, so I did radio while I was doing my magazine for
oh,
years.
okay.
So I was on an online network and I did some kind of AM network, and I loved it. I really truly enjoyed, and I had a team at the time. So I'd be the straight man, then there'd be somebody who was like the comic relief
Mm-hmm.
man, and then I had a third person, and we were all dialogue, and it went really well. We had great chemistry, and it was just fun. And again, it was filling that space that we didn't have at the time of just like having fun. Because for me, every podcast even that I was listening to, it was someone's sermon that they had reduced down to 30 minutes and put on podcast platform. It wasn't,
A
and that was great because I
conversation.
love listening to sermons online.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it wasn't conversational. Exactly. Thank you for that language, my brother. But so there was a lot of stuff that was literally just ministry, and I love that because there's a space for that.
Mm-hmm.
But I didn't find a lot that was conversational, that was life application, that was having fun. There's some episodes that we don't talk about, like, faith is infused in what we do,
Mm-hmm.
but we're not coming out with a thus and thee and thou, because it's not necessarily about thus and thee and thou. It's about, hey, how was your day, bro?
Right.
How was you doing? I made a tilapia. Did you know that's not a real fish? Like, it literally is just about, hey, what's up? How you doing? And then if we get to the heavier issues of faith,
Mm-hmm.
it's, hey, this is what I believe. This is the tenet of my faith. So
Gotcha.
for me, it really was just about filling a void, and also using that creative juices that I already knew were there. So I know that one of my callings is to affect media
Mm,
in some kind of way. I
mm,
know that God called me to go into that marketplace that is media, and to really affect change, to really preach the gospel, and to be what I like to call that Chick-fil-A for media. So,
mm.
Chick-fil-A is a faith-based organization, but they're not coming to you, giving you a chicken sandwich, talking about, and the Lord said, they're just literally like, thank you, my pleasure, have a good day. And you knew there was a difference
Mm-hmm.
in how
Because of how
they had
treat you.
a model, and a model because of exactly how they treat you. They treat you in a way that it makes you go, what? There's something different about this fast food chain. There's something different about this brand. And then people started researching like, oh, they're a faith-based organization.
Mhm.
But you knew there was something different enough about them that made you want to dig a little deeper.
Right.
And that's what we try to be with any media outlet that I have been blessed to be a part of. It's not necessarily that I'm coming out the gate like, and God will and he can, even though there's nothing wrong with that.
Right.
But for us, it's one of those things where like, I'm having fun listening to this podcast. Oh, they seem to really have common
Mhm.
sense. Oh, they really said something that kind of pointed me to Christ. let me dig a little deeper. Oh, they're Christians.
Hmm.
So for me, it really was important to have a podcast that we don't hide the cross, we stand behind the cross,
Facts.
but we are at the end of the day championing the mission of Christ in a way that is both palatable, God honoring, but leading with cleaning the fish before we try to do all this other stuff with the fish. You know what I
I
mean?
love it, love it. I mean, for just kind of basically like a everyday Christian. Like we don't get up, start preaching. We gotta just go through our day like
Exactly.
regular people. We just our decisions on our and where we go and not go kind of are influenced by our faith. But for the most part, we live a
Come on,
regular
bruh.
life.
Let them know. Let them know. Yes, exactly. Everyday life. You hit the nail on the head.
Okay, so now that you're doing a podcast, how have you evolved? How has it influenced you in such a way? Has it tweaked caused you to tweak anything about yourself? Because
Oh, yeah.
for me, I wasn't necessarily in that space, right? So for
Hmm.
me, it changed a lot. You know what I mean? It changed a lot for me. It kind of
Okay.
helped me with my voice and all of that stuff. You know what I mean? When I
Sure.
first started, because
Sure.
I wasn't in that space. So how did it affect you? How did it cause you to tweak something or maybe enhance something?
Sure. I think for me, it makes me conscious of little stuff like your inflection and
Mm-hmm.
tone. For me, I don't know if you noticed, but when I'm passionate, I go fast. When I'm excited, I go fast. When I'm mad, I go fast. So I process at a very fast rate. So it's something I'm still working on to this day, really just pacing the process because I go so fast. So for me, when I record, I don't always get it right, but I'm conscious of, okay, Nikki, you can pace yourself in this space. You can have a dialogue. You can give room for pause. Like
Right.
these are the things you're conscious of because literally I'm like, ah, I have high energy. So
Facts.
for me, it's caused that, but also it helps me in my preaching
Mm.
because it helps me to formulate more clearly focused thoughts to really, uh, again, take pregnant pauses to remind myself of the overarching mission of my storytelling ability. I believe storytelling is a huge component of ministry that sometimes we don't talk about because everybody just talks about exegeting the text and getting to the scripture.
Mm-hmm.
But you have to get people to really see the whole picture before you just give them data, facts, and
Mm-hmm.
figures. So for me, it's helped me in that way.
I love that. I love that. All right. So, what if you? How can I phrase this? Because I know you do a bunch of different stuff. So, how do you generate? What are the different ways that you generate revenue?
So for me, my main bread and butter is my day job.
Mm-hmm.
I worked in ministry for about 13 years before I went to corporate again. And so I did 10 years working in a church, a mega church in Atlanta. And then after that, I worked for myself for 3 years. So I have that experience of just working for myself. And I know the grind to all my entrepreneurs. I know your grind, especially in these COVID-19 streets. Please know that my heart and prayers are with you. And so for me, it's my main bread and butter, which is my main income. And then I also have a lot of side projects and I have saved money and then left the job to go pursue entrepreneurship. And I've been in a place where I had a double hustle, as they call it, where I was working a day job. And I think that in ministry, we do people a disservice when we think ministry is only when you do ministry full time,
Right.
because you really can do and both. It doesn't have to be either or. I know some people who are amazing and successful in corporate America, and they're equally successful in ministry and non marketplace ministry. And so my mindset is if you want to work for yourself full time, which I think is something to aspire for, if you want to work in ministry full time, I'm of the mindset of letting your ministry or your whatever it is you do, your creative, basically cause you to have to leave your day job.
Mm-hmm.
Like literally, there's such a demand for what you do, and there's such a demand for your anointing, and God has opened up so many doors that you literally can't work a day job anymore because you're being called out into those uttermost parts. So I really believe that that's key component to leaving your job. I don't know if anybody's thinking about that. That's just my own little caveat. That one's free.
Nah, I'm with
But
you.
I
I love it.
also, yeah, so I also believe that it's important to have multiple streams of income. So for me,
Mm.
my day job, for me, I believe investing in stocks and bonds and CDs. I have all those things. I also believe in whether it's speaking engagements. Now, for me, I don't set an honorarium when I do speaking engagements. I allow people to bless
Bless
me.
you.
Yeah. So now, don't get me wrong. I know I have some friends that do, and I think if you need to do that, or that's
Nothing
your
wrong with
if
it.
you're itinerant preacher, do what you got to do because serving is worth his hire.
Mm-hmm.
So I believe in paying people what they're worth. There are some areas that I go into where I don't take an honorarium at all, but and I sew into people. So I just think it really depends on, what you're skilled at and learning how to monetize those. So again, for me, I still get residuals from my books. I still have my stocks and stuff, and I still have my day job, and I still have my speaking engagements. So those are some ways that God has blessed me to be able to stream
I
income.
love it. Love it.
Yeah,
Love it.
I
Like,
love it too. Who don't like securing the bag for Jesus, huh?
but like when you start saying multiple streams of income, that's always been something that, I tell people, like, always, you
Yeah,
never, you know what I mean? You never want to have such a large percentage on one thing that, you know what I mean? You
yeah,
have nothing else. That if that one thing goes away, you have nothing to kind of
yeah,
fall back on. So you should always have
exactly,
multiple streams of income. So I love that. I love
exactly.
that. All right. So it seems like, what I mean, Nikki has had this amazing life, like super perfect life. But
Not
just in
even a little
case,
bit.
like, um, what was the hardest thing that you had to overcome?
Just in life, that's a huge question, Daryl. The hardest
As
thing
as
that you had to
comfortable as you feel,
overcome.
no pressure.
Oh no, I'm an open book, boo. I'm like the hardest thing though I've ever. Um, I think one of the hardest things had to be honestly when I started working for myself full time.
Mm,
Because the thing is, so I'm a planner. I'm a project management by nature, so I have facts and figures and data points all figured out. And I saved up a good little chunk of money. I strategized my plan, and I knew without a shadow of doubt in my mind that it was the voice of God that told me that it was time to launch out without a shadow of a doubt. But what I discovered in that is that you could have all the plans, you could have all the data, facts, and figures, and you could have God's yes, but it doesn't mean that God is only leading you into a yes for lush times. There are times where God leads us into places for testing, for trials, for really just sharpening and refining
mm,
and a character building and all that stuff. And that isn't always the conversation we hear in entrepreneurship. We're expected, like, I forgot what meme it was where they're talking about that chart where what people think entrepreneurship looks like
right.
and what it really looks like. People think that it's just this slow climb or fast climb, but there really is ebbs and
Ebbs and
flows and dips and
flows.
everything in between, which is fine because it builds character. But I really believe that having a sober mind going into it really makes a difference. So for me, it wasn't the entrepreneurship piece because I loved it, but it was really difficult to wrap my mind around the fact that because God called me to it, it wasn't going to be
Like it
this,
wasn't
or
like
excuse me, it wasn't going to
smooth
be this. It was
sailing.
going to be the smooth sailing. That was going to be this dips and ebbs and flows. So that was difficult because I thought, well, God, no, wait a minute. You
Mm-hmm.
said this is
Mm-hmm.
gonna, and it was
Mm-hmm.
gonna be peaches
Mm-hmm.
and cream. So I thought, but then I had to remind myself, okay, He called you to it. He didn't say everything was gonna be perfect in it.
Mm.
So really for me, that was tough, wrap my mind around it, but it gave me a great lesson that I still lean on to this day. And so now, I could say like David, it was good for me that I was afflicted because I learned God's statutes.
Mm.
So in that affliction, I learned that He was a provider because I never went without. In that affliction, I learned that He was a door opener because literally every time I thought it was about to run dry, and again, entrepreneurs know what I'm talking about. Every time you'll have moments where you have booming business and everything is going well, and then you have spells where it's just dry, and so you have to learn to save
Mm-hmm.
in the lush times so that when the lean times come, you still have an even flow. So God just taught me so many valuable lessons, but that was definitely probably one of the toughest times that I've had in my career trajectory.
Love it. Yeah, I mean, I think sometimes we see all these different entrepreneurs, and like I tell people, like sometimes, like I work more for myself than I work for
Oh,
someone, because
absolutely.
like
Oh,
when you're
absolutely.
not physically doing something, your mind is still working. Like your mind is constantly turning over. Sometimes you can't even fall asleep because you're like turning over ideas or turning over next steps or turning over to-do lists. And it's just like this
Hmm.
constant, you can't shut it off because one,
Amen.
most of the times you go into something that you're passionate about. And that's a tricky
Yeah.
thing about something that you're passionate about. Sometimes you can't turn it off.
You are correct. And you be up at night thinking about all these bright ideas and witty inventions and brainstorming. You like, Lord, if I buy two, carry one, I can really launch a $5 billion industry business. Like, so yeah, I totally get it.
All right, so who are some of the people that Nikki draws support from? Who's in your support system? That circle.
I have been blessed. I was just telling somebody this the other day. I have been blessed to know some really incredible, amazing people. I know a lot of leaders, and it's so funny when you're an entrepreneur. You usually are surrounded by entrepreneurs,
Mm-hmm.
right? When you are creative, you usually have a lot of creative people in your Rolodex. So for me, I have a lot of people who are amazing leaders, whether it's pastors, whether it's government officials, whether it's musicians. Like I have a lot of people who understand the grind and the glory of leadership, and they hold me accountable. They sharpen me. They let me know I'm not crazy because they've experienced the same thing. Like literally, so some of my best friends are pastors in other cities and singers who have been on Grammy Award winning albums and stuff. And we talk about the real of it all. So I think it's important that you have people in your corner who can really not just throw scriptures at you, but give you practical application. So I'm of the mindset that there's power in scriptures and there's need for it. But if God forbid somebody in your family should pass away, I don't know that you would be comforted with my first thing to be like, oh, God got you. He'll never leave you or forsake you, brother. It's going to be all right. You'd be like, okay, I know that he's not going to leave me or forsake me. However, comma, I'm hurt right now. So I think sometimes you just need people who understand your plight and where you are and say, you know what, we know that God got you. He's got you covered, but I'm just here to be present in your life. I'm just here to be a shoulder. I know how you feel because I've been there. Like literally, those are the people I have in my life who really lift my arms, even in those moments where I'm like, ooh, this is a lot.
Right. Yeah, you need that. You always need that. Yeah, sometimes you're right.
Absolutely.
You just need people to kind of sit and be quiet with you. You know what I mean? So you don't always need someone to kind of give you advice. You kind of just need someone to kind of just come sit and be quiet with me, please.
Yes. Yeah, I learned that when I think I maybe was like 21, 22, and I was singing in a choir. And I remember the girl sitting next to me, her grandma died like maybe a couple of days before. And she was one of those people where her grandma was like her mom. And I was naive and young and zealous and just wanted to help. I just want to be a blessing to people. And I remember turning to her in rehearsal because, I could just tell her countenance was just heavy. She was just sad. And I said to her, is there anything I can do to help? And she looked at me and she was like, can you bring my grandma back? And when I say, bro, that just was like, ugh. Because the thing is, I was trying to offer help. And then it was in that moment I realized, Nikki, sometimes all you have to do is be present. And it totally changed the way I had benevolence toward people. It totally changed the way I loved on people. Because again, when we're going through affliction, there are some things that we go through that there's nothing anybody can say to comfort us, whether it's in business, whether it's as a creative, whether it's like loss, especially with what's going on with COVID-19. Like all of us have been affected, whether it's emotionally, whether it's financially, whether it's spiritually. We have all had to really gird ourselves up with the word of God. And so as much as I can I try to be sensitive to the climate and the tone of where people are. And people are like that with me. But at the end of the day, I really think having a system of people around you who really get the heart of who you are and who can meet you where you are is very, very important.
I love that. I think that's what changed my career the minute I got be a part of communities, people.
Oh, wow.
That's what changed my career. You know what I mean? Because sometimes you kind of feel like that's what happened. I'm certain of it. I get connected with people that, are in my field. It's either by field or by, just, I don't know, have the same mindset. You know what I mean? It changes it. Now it changes the whole perspective of you doing everything. And you have someone to kind of lean on, get feedback and all of this different stuff. So I feel like that's what changed. That was years ago, but I know that for sure. That's what that was where the pivot happened.
Sure. Yeah. That makes so much sense.
All right. So what is that thing that Nikki can't live without that's not her phone?
Does everybody save their phone?
It started to rack up a while ago, so I had to add that in a while ago.
Yeah, I totally feel. What's one thing I could never live without? And I'm not going to give you the spiritual because I'm sure people are like, oh, the word of God. No, we don't talk real. Even though we know the word, have I hid my heart that I might not sin against God. Right. Outside of all of the stuff, I'm just giving the disclaimer for the saints. Outside of all of that stuff, the one thing that I feel like I could not live without is probably community. Like the people that I love. Like I have some bomb people in my life, Daryl. They're just really, really, really great people. And I don't know, maybe it's because of the climate that we live in. Like I have so many different, I don't know how many Zoom meetings that my friends put me on a week because they just want to see your face and you want to see their face. So I realize that there is importance in having touch points and having people that you can just like be safe places with and decompress with and love on. So I think the one thing that I probably could not live without outside of food is is community.
I love
A
that.
healthy community of people. Yeah,
Yeah, I'm with you on that. I think that changes everything. I feel bad
absolutely.
for people that don't have a community because they're missing out.
Yeah,
That
absolutely. And a healthy community
yes,
at
yes,
that.
a healthy one
Yeah.
that like empowers you. Like they'll challenge you, and at the same time, you'll see them next to you, carrying you while they challenging you.
Oh,
So
absolutely.
you know what I mean.
Absolutely.
I
It's a
love that.
blessing.
I love that. I love that.
Yeah.
All right, book recommendations.
Book recommendations. So I have been on, I should have brought it over here. There's this book that I'm reading called The Enneagram. Have you heard
I've
it?
heard of it. Oh my
Y'all
goodness.
got to get up
Oh
on that
my
Enneagram.
goodness.
I'm
Oh
just
my
saying,
goodness.
bruh, it's a thing. So here's what I like about it. Even if, if you're not a person of faith and you're watching this and faith is not your thing, there's still some level of assessment and self-awareness that comes about
Hmm.
from reading the book. So I'm an Enneagram 1,
I was
which
just
means
about
that
to
whole,
ask
yeah,
you what number are you?
yeah, which is like the moral perfectionist. I don't feel like I'm a perfectionist. I feel like I've been healed and delivered from perfectionism. But so for me, I enjoy self actualization.
Mm,
I enjoy becoming better. That's the part of the Enneagram that is true of my life. I enjoy processes and details and systems. So for me, it really is a mirror right now. And
mm,
so I have an Enneagram group with me and some of my friends, and we go over our numbers. And they have books, you guys. And you can get them on Amazon for like $12. It's super cheap, right? And they have books that tell you um, what to do to be healthier according to your number. So it's
mm.
not one catch-all book. It literally is a book per number. So to have your number on the front of the book, and you go through the different steps and the questions. So like, for example, we did our, I think, Tuesday night, and the question was about core motivations. What motivates you? What drives you? What are your core desires, your core longings, your core weaknesses? So being able to look at all that really helped me to have like that mirror to say, oh, okay, this is where I need to
Mm.
improve, and this is how I become more Christ-like, because this, we don't like this, Nikki. Let's get rid of that. We're gonna work on that. But sometimes you don't, you know that you don't like something
Right.
about what your habits are,
Mm-hmm.
but sometimes you don't know what they're rooted in. And for me, it's kind of like that map in the mall. You know how you go to the mall and you see that big map and it says you are here and you're trying to find the store you need?
Mm-hmm.
A lot of times, if you don't know where your here is, you don't
Right.
know how to get to the store you need to get to.
Facts.
So what that Enneagram book does for a lot of people is it helps you to locate where you are so that you can locate where you want to go.
Interesting. You've now painted a different perspective on Enneagram to me. I
I take it you're not an
I
Enneagram
know I
fan.
not like you know what? To be honest, like I didn't know anything about it. A couple of people that I work with, they were like, they were talking about it, so they got me involved, and they're like, "Oh, what number you have?" So I have no idea. But I never really, you know what I mean? It's just I just saw it as something in passing, you know what I mean? So,
Yeah, I think it's definitely, I mean, you could have so many different things that will help you kind of self assess.
mhm.
I think the key points that they try to drive home is being self aware so that you can bring about change if that's your desire to become more Christ like. So at the
Mm,
end of the day, not to say that I agree, because there's some things they say about my Enneagram number, and it's absolutely not who I am.
mm,
Like, for example, they have this thing about Enneagram ones being very hard on themselves to the point of just like a large inner critic voice.
mm,
I honestly don't have an inner critic that's constantly like, this is sucky, this is bad.
mhm.
Not really at all. Like, I'm very balanced in who I am. I know who I am. I am very acutely aware of correcting mistakes, but I don't
You
have,
don't beat
I have a
yourself
very
up.
healthy, yeah, I have a very healthy dose of self-esteem. Let's say it
All
that
right, I
way.
like that.
So
Okay.
there are some things, I think if you chew the meat and spit out the bones, you'll be fine. But so to your question, in a long roundabout way, I'm reading the Enneagram book.
All right. Cool. I like it. All right.
Yeah.
So I know we're in quarantine, so it's a little bit different. But like, what is like the first hour of Nikki's ideal day? Like, what is that? What is your routine? What is that like?
So I'm not a morning person. I get up, but I get up every morning because I need a sense of routine. So like, my friends have been joking with me lately because during this quarantine, we do a lot of Zoom and FaceTime calls. And every time they call me, they're like, girl, you dressed? Girl, you got on makeup? I'm like, for me, it's not even, if no one sees me, I'm
Mm,
still going to at least get dressed, do my hair, and have like a basic like look, because I have to create a routine that creates habit
facts.
that keeps me in a normal flow. And I
Mm,
find that if I, like, some people, they are like superstars. They can work all day in their pajamas and get it done. For me, I need to get up and shower and get dressed.
Mm-hmm.
I need to actually sit at my desk and create a sense of normal so that I can be productive. I'm still productive in my pajamas, but I feel better
Mm-hmm.
when I look better and when I'm doing my thing. So when I wake up in the morning, usually I'll lay in the bed for a second. I'll read a devotional. I'll pray, check my email, check Instagram, because we all do that, or my socials or whatever, unless I'm fasting for social. And then I literally just get up and shower. I usually drink a protein shake in the morning, and I'll get started my day that way. But my first hour generally is I'm laying in the bed and I'm reading, or I'm up and I'm praying. I do prayer calls with some of my friends on a weekly basis, so I'll do that. Or I'm just staring at the ceiling, like literally collecting my thoughts. I'm one of those people, I don't know about you, Daryl, but I'm one of those people, like the first hour, 2 hours of the day, I'm real quiet. Like I'm real, like, and it's not because I'm being super deep, it's that I just, my voice
You just need that
don't want to talk
stillness.
until
You need
about
that
2 hours later.
stillness. You need that stillness.
You really do. So I'm usually really quiet in the mornings, and I thrive usually, about, I'd say from 9 o'clock to about 4 o'clock in the morning. Anytime in between there, I'm just like, but anytime before 9 o'clock, I'm present, I'm awake, I'm getting it done, but I'm very quiet.
Okay.
Yeah.
Interesting. So
Isn't it though?
what is next for Nikki?
What's next? So for me, God has charged me, I feel, to really go deeper in my basics and my core practices. So because I'm a preacher, I do stuff like study the word, I pray, I do all that stuff, right? But I have really been feeling a tug there lately to just go deeper in my prayer life, go deeper in my word life. So for me, I feel like in doing that there's going to be all kinds of things that God allows me to branch off and do. So I'm doing that. I also have some, I can't tell y'all everything, but I got some entrepreneurial endeavors that are strictly about commerce and goods that I want to launch.
Nice.
So my prayer is that it'll be launched by the end of this year, because I'm blessed in that my ministry side, it's going to do what it's going to do by virtue of just being obedient and God opening doors. But I really would love to have a niche in the marketplace that is literally just about commerce and goods. And I'm not talking about, not that there's anything wrong with this, but I'm not talking about selling like holy lip balm or nothing like that. Because, you know, sometimes we put Jesus on everything.
Oh,
and I wonder if Jesus would be in heaven like, just sell lip balm. You ain't got to put holy lip balm on, just sell lip balm.
Holy lip
I'm joking.
balm.
I don't need, now let me give a disclaimer. I don't know if that's a thing or not. I have not researched.
You're not
I'm just
knocking the holy lip balm.
I'm not knocking the hustle. If you got some holy anointed lip balm, sell your lip balm to the glory of God and make your money and tithe off of it. All I'm saying is, for me, I want, again, back to that Chick-fil-A model or that Forever 21 model. There's faith interwoven in the brand, but they're not selling holy such and such.
Right.
That's what I desire to have happen. So I'm not sure when it's going to launch, but I'm in active talks and active brainstorming sessions with a couple of my people to really see what we can do there. So other than that, I know there's another book in me. It's so funny. I don't want to write it right now, to be quite blunt, only because I think as a creative, sometimes the best of us want to take sabbaticals from what we love to create, just to have a sense of recharge and refuel. So I know there's a book that will eventually come. And then just prayerfully more podcast stuff. I want to do some TV stuff. So yeah, I'm excited about what God is going to open up in that space.
I love it. I'm loving it. Let me know. I mean, I'll help you promote it as much as I can. Let me know.
Thank you, bro.
Oh, for sure.
And thank you for opening up your platform and really just being a blessing to so many creatives who need to hear your advice and your wisdom. So thank you for this opportunity.
You know what? I'm just here for the relationships, whatever come from that. It is, I mean, it's just icing on the cake.
Amen.
I love it.
Praise God.
All right. So where can people go to find you, learn more about you?
So anywhere the internets are, not internet, but internet. As George W. would
guy
say.
had that S, you know what I mean?
As George W. would say, the internet. I'm Nick, Nikk, last name Washington, at wherever you log on. So Instagram, Facebook. I have a Snapchat that I don't use. I have a TikTok that I'm starting to use. Twitter that I kind of use. So my main thing is Instagram. So you can check out Nick, Nikk, last name Washington. And I'd be glad to connect and answer any questions and all that stuff.
Sweet. This has been awesome. It's great to hear your story and insight that you shared, Nikki.
Thank you so much. It's been awesome to get to know you and to hear the vision that you have and the heart for creative. So thank you again, seriously, for this opportunity in this space.
Thank you for listening to this week's episode. I hope it's been super valuable to you and you're now ready to take your audience building, your community growing to the next level to help you and help me build our empire, for lack of a better word, or just to build our thing. Remember to stop by iTunes, Passion Behind the Art, and leave a review and subscribe. It's very important to me. It helps the podcast grow, and it makes me feel good to kind of hear from you guys, to know what you like about this podcast, what it's done for you. So jump on iTunes and subscribe and leave a review. Passion Behind the Art. Be blessed.